Hey everyone, ask yourself the question, what are the connections between Moses and Jesus feeding the 5,000 and walking on water? So let's unravel this mystery together. Matthew 14:21. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. About 5,000 men were fed, in addition to women and children. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. Israel's food shortage became painfully obvious when they were in the wilderness called Sin. The name of this barren land is significant. They were pilgrims passing through a harsh and alien land. It would be here in a land called Sin that God would reveal his provision from heaven. Hungry, empty stomachs made the people whiners and complainers. Moses and Aaron were the objects of their grumbling. Typical of grumblers, they selectively revised their history to intensify their distaste for the present. They claimed it would have been better to die at the hand of the Lord in Egypt when he passed over them than to starve in the wilderness. Even though they blamed Moses, it was directed towards the Lord. In essence, they were insinuating that the salvation they enjoyed in Egypt was an act of a fickle God. They attribute to the Lord a sinister plot to let them suffer in the wilderness. But notice in Exodus 16:4 that the Lord did not become insecure or try to defend himself. He didn't have to answer any human accusations. Instead, he promised to rain down his grace upon them in the form of bread from heaven. This bread from heaven was God's provision for his people dwelling in the wilderness of sin. God provided manna for only a day at a time daily. Jesus told us that we ought to ask God to give us this day our daily bread. This is characteristic of Jehovah being their provider. Where sin abounded, grace abounded much more. Romans 5:20-21. By feeding the 5,000, they finally recognized that Moses was pointing to Jesus as their manna from heaven. The Bible reads that after Jesus sent the disciples to the other side of the sea, a violent storm rose up. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a spirit," and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid." The Israelites in the wilderness and the 12 disciples were not only afraid of the conditions around them, but also of the one who provided the provisions to help them. Christ has the power over the laws and customs of nature to control and dispense with them at his pleasure. It's natural for our body